Alrighty, it is officially 11:17. It looks like core team's here. So I am going to kick off. So hello everyone and welcome. We are officially in week 12 of Testnet. And for those of us who have been participating in quests, we just finished up another week of testing the L1 NFT Playground. This week, we introduced a new collection of NFTs from our winners of the Testnet NFT Creator Competition collection and a new trade functionality we wanted to test out together. So a few quick notes before we kick off and head into questions. So first of all, I wanted to thank over 400 people who submitted questions for this week's AMA. As you can imagine, we won't be able to get to every single question today, but we do these weekly every Friday, and now I have a huge repository of community questions to answer in future weeks across a variety of topics. So really excited about that, and I think we're going to be able to have a lot of really valuable kind of discussion moving forward. Second of all, in case you missed it, the quest system we've been using, formerly known as Crew 3, rebranded this week and is now called Zeely. So all of our quests have officially been switched over to the new platform. All of the community XP still stands. That said, I wanted to put out a little warning. If you completed a quest on Monday before the changeover hit, we ask that you please resubmit it sometime before the end of testnet, which according to our current schedule, alert, will be rolling through till the end of May. That's one of our biggest questions is how long is testnet going to last? So, and through the end of May, and just as a reminder, we are planning at least one more reset before we get to betanet. So for anyone who is collecting up tokens, collecting up NFTs, know that we are in very early stages of Lamina 1. All tokens and NFTs are for testing purposes only and do not have inherent value. We're working on building and testing out the functionality of this platform. That is the value now. And any sort of, tokens, incentives, all of that stuff, it's not really going to hit until we're closer to mainnet. So stay with us, keep testing, keep building, and set that expectation in your mind moving forward. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Will and the engineering team for some updates on what we're up to this week as we build Lamina 1, what to expect in the coming weeks, and a few other things we're working on in the background as testnet continues. As always, if you want to submit a question for the Q&A session a little later on here, please do so in the comment section, and we will open up the floor at the end of the AMA. So, Will, what's going on with L1 engineering? What are you guys working on?
Yeah, so we don't have too much in the way of public updates this week. A lot of what we're working on is what we were working on last week. So that's going to include doing benchmarking on the core chain and on subnets. We've made some really good progress, both in testing subnets and also being able to create and deploy custom subnets. And that's going to be a major functionality that we're hoping to put forward to developers in the near future. And it ties directly into, I think we've discussed this in the past, into our overall strategy in terms of ensuring that creators have access to high performance Web3 infrastructure for the experiences that they create. So we're doing a lot of work on subnets. Once we get those benchmarks and testing kind of the first phase of this done, like I said last week, we're going to increase the size of the network with the next cohort of validators. I don't think we've gotten all of the benchmarks completed just yet. So we were hoping to get the next cohort by the end of this week. But it's looking more likely that the invites will go out sometime early next week. Outside of that, both Joel and Chris Mahoney have been working hard on the Unity SDK. I think they've made a good amount of progress, and I'm hoping we'll have something we can show the community on that front soon. And then, we've been doing a lot of architecting and kind of product specification and definition so that we can kind of plan a roadmap, hopefully one that we can release to the public that lets you guys know like what we're building when and what this is all going to look like, both for you as developers and then you as users as well. But yeah, like I said, we don't have anything kind of too user facing that we can show outside of the updates to the marketplace this week.
Heads are down, people are working hard, which is always a good sign. So thank you, Will. Next, we're going to head into a few questions from the community. So I pulled a bunch this week, and first up, I wanted to just address stuff that we're currently in and some questions about the NFT Playground. So my Air Dara asks, what are the transaction fees I have to pay while trading and minting on the NFT Playground? But for someone who hasn't, used crypto before and isn't familiar with this, why does it cost tokens to send and transfer and trade and all of those things?
Yeah, so this kind of goes to the notion of what decentralization is, and is really one of the driving forces behind making decentralization possible. All of Lamina One, or the major infrastructure pieces of Lamina One, all run on like community owned infrastructure. So that means like you, the users, you, the community, are the ones that run the servers that operate the platform. And the only way that that works, generally speaking, is if you guys are incentivized to do so. So that's kind of what these fees will eventually be used to do. Is these fees are paid directly to the network. They're not paid to us, the team. They're not paid to individuals. They're paid to the network, and then and that creates kind of a deflationary. If we start going into the tokenomics of what how our network works, is it creates a deflationary pressure on the network. Some of those tokens may be delivered to node operators. Some of them may be burned, and then every 24 hours, I think it is. I actually don't know off the top of my head. New tokens are minted and given to validators and nominators in the network. So those fees at a high level, those are going to community members who are either validating the network, so running nodes, or delegating on the network, which is staking their coins to vote for who the active validators are. So yeah, that's at a high level what those fees are. Again, they don't go to us. They're used directly to incentivize the network.
Super cool Crypto 101 answer. Thanks, Will. Next, we have a question from Ruslan99, who's asking us, how did you achieve such fast transactions for Lamina One? I know that's actually kind of a compliment we get a lot, but yeah, in general, what's behind the speed of our current blockchain?
It's a good question. So there's a lot of facets to it. Number one, a lot of it is stuff that we adopted from Avalanche when we forked them. So credit to them as well. But, part of it is the fact that we're a proof of stake network. So we don't have proof of work, which if you're not familiar with it, is like the notion of doing computationally heavy work to prove that you're an active member of the network. Because we're not having, we don't have that proof of work aspect, we're able to keep our block times a lot shorter. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is, we have a very small network currently. So we only have, I think, 25-ish validators in the network, and that helps keep a lot of the consensus overhead fairly small. The good news is the network shouldn't slow down a lot. Part of our architecture ensures that, as the network grows, it doesn't slow down a whole lot, but it will slow down a little bit. And the answer to dealing with that slowdown is, again, these subnets that I was talking about earlier. So the third kind of reason why we're pretty fast at the moment is there's not a whole lot of other traffic going through the network. So all of the traffic, for basically the playground has its own dedicated EVM environment at the moment. And that's kind of like our entire strategy for developers moving forward, is when you have this dedicated EVM environment, or even a non-EVM environment, when you have this dedicated computing environment, you're able to achieve much higher throughputs because you can dedicate all those resources directly to your application. This is kind of like a new trend that's been emerging, I think, in the Web3 space, this notion of application-specific blockchains, which is kind of like this notion that like not everyone needs to build on the same EVM environment. Not everyone needs to build on the same blockchain. That's like having a lot of Web2 applications build within the same like server instance or AWS instance. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense because you're sharing performance and bandwidth with all the other applications built on that infrastructure. So in the same way that currently the Playground is really the only thing that's heavily using the primary C chain, that's also going to be the case for developers who launch their own subnet and create their own dedicated EVM environment. They'll have all of the same performance, and they can dedicate it all directly to their applications or experiences.
On the flip side of that, I had a little fun curating the questions today, but someone is also asking, why is the NFT marketplace itself slowing down? So, question about the speed, and then also question about the slowness of the NFT Playground.
Mahoney, do you got any insight into that one? I mean, I think we covered a lot of this last week.
Yeah, I would say no. I think it really comes down to just the amount of
It seemed Mahoney's doing some kid wrangling today, so apologies for the somewhat sketchy audio. But yeah, if you want to dive deep into the NFT Playground, the kind of slowness and all of that, we address it really deeply in last week's AMA. So next up, we have a question from Ollie, who asks, with the launch of the NFT Playground, what are your plans to sort of like make NFT functionality or NFTs unique on Lamina One compared to other marketplaces or platforms or capabilities?
It's a good question. There's going to be a lot to it. So, I mean, we're going through a user experience, user story process right now where we're trying to really identify from a user experience standpoint where the big friction points and hurdles are for people to, number one, adopt using these marketplaces, but number two, to use them not only with low fees and high performance, but also like there's this notion of discoverability and the ability to find the content that you're looking for or content that's suitable for whatever you're buying an NFT for. So if it's a game, making sure you can find NFTs that are compatible with that game, or if it's art, being able to find specific styles of art. So there's a discoverability aspect of it that we're hoping to provide a lot of innovation in, and then also on the user experience side of things, we're hoping to have a really smooth onboarding process, high performance transactions. So like you're seeing in the NFT Playground, we'll have like really low transaction times and really low transaction fees, all of which will, I think, make an overall really good experience. So those are all things we hope to plug into an eventual marketplace. But again, marketplace is a little bit further down on our roadmap. It's not something we're planning on releasing as a product in the short term. But those are kind of the things we hope to integrate either into our own marketplace or into marketplaces we partner with.
Mikhail asks, will it be possible in the future to trade Lamina One NFTs on other marketplaces such as Blur or Opensea?
Yes. Currently, because we're in EVM chain at the moment, integration is fairly trivial to both of these platforms. So it's just a matter of partnership, like business development, and building that relationship. But yes, the goal would be to partner with the major marketplaces, Blur and Opensea probably being the most popular.
Cashew asks, how many creator collections will there be? And I can take this one. So far, we are just having 2 creator collections for Testnet. We've announced all 10 winners of our NFT creator competition so far. That said, over the next couple of weeks, get ready because we are about to launch a couple of more campaigns celebrating creators in the future, more NFT projects where more L1 creators will be able to see their work minted on the L1 blockchain. So stay tuned. Just 2 for now, but once we head into BetaNet, there will be more competitions like this. I think we were super excited with the community engagement with our last sort of NFT quest, and definitely want to do more in the future. Just not only from being able to check out all of the cool art that our community is making and all of the cool and interesting projects that you guys are creating, and kind of like rallying around you guys, but also because using that creative and being able to mint it and trade it is really, really helping us with, benchmarking, testing, figuring out, user flows and all of that stuff. So yes, there will be far more. Jails Fiva asks, how safe is a Lamina 1 smart contract? So obviously with the launch of the NFT Playground, we've also got quite a few smart contracts kind of going around. And so had quite a few questions on just, how they're working, the security, and how we're building them.
I don't necessarily know what the question is asking. Are they asking about our smart contracts or smart contracts in general? So like the NFT smart contracts that we launched, or are they asking like how safe are smart contracts in general?
I think
the smart
it says Lamina 1 smart contract. So ours, the ones that we launched along with the Playground.
Yeah, so the NFT smart contracts that we launched are fairly standard smart contracts. We didn't write them from scratch. We pulled them from existing smart contracts that are used by other people and other platforms and modified them specifically for the Playground. I would say they're pretty safe. They haven't been audited, and usually I recommend anyone who launches, a smart contract that's going to hold any significant amount of value. I would suggest that they get them audited by a third party. These ones have not, because currently they're not meant to hold value, as Casey said at the beginning of this call. But because the modifications were fairly standard to existing audited contracts, I would say that these are probably pretty safe. And then, so like generally speaking, your smart contracts are going to be as safe as, number one, the network that they're deployed on. So obviously, if the network itself isn't safe, you'll run into some pretty big issues. But more importantly and more likely, the safety of your smart contract is going to be up to you as the developer or the person deploying it. And that, like I said, part of that is making sure you're following best practices. Usually it's best to, take work that's already been done, that's been used a bunch on a couple different platforms, that's been tested, and ideally that's been audited, and then to modify it to suit your needs. And again, if it's going to hold a lot of value, to get it audited again. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Check answers, how many rounds will NFT testing last? I can kind of kick off the short-term answer for this one. We have 1 more week of NFT testing in my quest schedule. Next week, as a little spoiler alert, we're going to be introducing a new burn functionality to the NFT Playground. But I don't know if you want to talk a little bit further, Will, on just what our plan for NFT testing in the future is going to look like, after this kind of round of testing.
Yeah, so that's part of the architecting process we've been going through. I would like to see another round of NFT testing happen once we once we release subnets and subnet interoperability. And we would like to see like NFTs that are minted or generated in one subnet. We'd like the community to help us test moving them to another subnet. So that would be like akin to if you had one game that was using a bunch of NFTs, you would be able to take those NFTs and move them to another game. So that's something that's going to be a little bit further down the line, but that would be, to me, one of the more interesting tests that we could do. There's going to be some NFT standards that we're defining. And those, again, we'll probably do another round of community testing on as well. And those could either be, the same subnet type testing, or they could be on the primary chain like we did with this week.
And I have one more question on the playground before we broaden the scope of questions a little bit. But Max R asks, did Crew 3 Zealy provide any feedback around when the issues are expected to be resolved? So as I said at the kind of like top of the AMA, our quest system rebranded. Crew 3 is now Zealy. We did have a couple of problems earlier this week where in the middle of their rebrand transition, a couple of our quests broke, but our moderators team at Defiance got on the phone with them almost immediately and made sure that all of the quest XP and all of the quests are now working again. So for anyone who's participating in the quests this week or last or anything, everything should be working. If they're not, please report us. Please report it to us, on Discord, and we will look into it. We're here for you, but it should be fixed. So as I said, now I want to dive into just another batch of questions that open things up a little broader about what to expect from L1 engineering and our community teams in the future. So EO4822 asks, what are your engineers most focused on right now?
Hey guys, so it's Mahoney. I'm back. I'm toddler safe.
Ooh, you sound much better.
yeah, a little stressed about that. Sorry, I was picking up his lunch. On our side, on the gaming SDK side, the main focus has been, for us at least, to mimic a lot of the functionality that people are used to using in the existing Web NFT Playground. It was called out correctly earlier. I heard that that Playground isn't necessarily a Lamina One product at all. It's really a playground, and that serves two purposes. It lets people get used to, especially those that aren't familiar with Web3 interactions, may not be familiar with trading NFTs. It helps them become comfortable and give them a space in our Discord to ask questions comfortably. But at the same time, those are base functionalities that we want across any sort of client that we provide to Lamina One creators. So a couple of things that have been taking place is, for sure, being in parity with that sort of functionality, being able to transfer NFTs, being able to transfer L1 tokens, starting to explore the implications of using subnets as an individual developer on the chain. Things like that are really my main focus. When I say I mean just in terms of our general guidance that will align with our roadmap in general on tech. But as a very, very sneak preview, and I'll just say it out here, but we're not entirely focused on it. What we have done is start to become familiar with also the needs of Unreal developers. We know that that's extremely important, just as much as if you were building something in Unity. And so we've had a couple of great strides for that initial jump into the Unreal world. It's C++ versus C#, but I just wanted to signal out that anybody that's interested in Unreal and has drifted towards Unity because it's technically easier to onboard, especially as a .NET developer, making sure that we have all our ducks in a row to keep those development work streams in parallel. I hope that helps.
Yeah. Jan Marigar 90s asks, what are the crypto sources of inspiration and ideas for the engineering team? Like, where are you guys getting your inspiration, and where do you guys go when you're deciding on what to build or how to build things?
I think Will would agree with me here that we don't reinvent any wheel. There's a lot of not only information and existing kind of walkthroughs that we hope to point to developers at that they can build their own experiences on the network. But I think that in general, build versus is a big engineering decision point that's made when we're significant, but also with blockchain and Web3, they're audited, such as general smart contracts and stuff. That's new on the gaming side, classical side for us, but it's something that's very well ingrained on the blockchain side. And so getting that and making sure that anything that we do can be walked back to something that has been audited and is secure. And beyond that, anything that we do that's novel also has the opportunity for that audit process. And if Will, you have anything else to add on top of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree. We as a strategy and overall strategy, we try not to reinvent any wheels, and to try to find the best practices in any of the components that we're building that currently exist, and see, number one, like, are there ways we can improve them, and number two, like, are there efficiencies we can gain by like unique integrations between these various components. And to do that, we largely take a look at what a lot of the other Web3 blockchain platforms are doing. We've worked Avalanche, but we follow Polkadot, Cosmos, Aptos. A lot of the other big projects out there who are trying in a lot of ways to do some of the same things we're doing, just with different approaches. And so we try to learn from those approaches, what's working for them, what's not working for them, and we apply that across the various products we're building, whether it's looking at the existing marketplaces to learn from what they're doing well and not doing well, to wallets, and even like from an architectural standpoint, like a lot of the stuff we're building on the Web3 side of things, on the blockchain side of things, excuse me, the problems are actually very similar to, the same problems that developers have been trying to solve in like MMO experiences in games for, over a decade, which is like, if you have this decentralized or distributed group of users trying to access infrastructure, how do you ensure, number one, like that none of those users can cheat the shared experience? So no single player, for example, in a game can like cheat in an online game. Like a lot of the strategies that are used to render these MMO worlds to ensure that, players can't cheat in them, and to ensure like performance is high. A lot of those same strategies exist in the blockchain world as well. And so we're using some of that, some of the lessons learned there as well. But yeah, so I'd say like we pull from a very broad spectrum of sources. And again, making sure that we don't really reinvent the wheel, but instead try to adopt the best of the various projects we track.
Thanks, guys. I've got two questions that I'm going to take as just like a fun little Easter egg for this AMA. So first of all, one of our questions from Maze has been, does the project have investors, not individuals? And if so, will this information be disclosed? So I pulled this question because you're hearing it first, AMA participants, but we are actually planning to put out a pretty big announcement next week about a next batch of investors in Lamina One that we are super excited to share with you. So stay tuned. Next week we'll have more information and we're super excited to share it. So when will this information be disclosed? Next week. ABR SART asks, are you going to add colors to the design of the appearance of the site? Another one that I want to take, you've heard it here first. We are actually getting ready over the next couple of weeks actually to launch a new and improved update to the Lamina One brand that, spoiler alert, yes, includes colors, includes a kind of a facelift and evolution of the very minimal brand that we have been currently using. And we are so excited to share it and roll it out with you. So again, next week, stay tuned. The server is going to start getting very busy with news of investor updates. We've got some really exciting new brand materials to share with you and start experimenting with, and expect a lot of changes both visually and with our transition to testnet to betanet over the next couple of weeks. Things are continuing to accelerate on both the sort of community and content side as well as the engineering side, and it's going to be an exciting week. So get ready, buckle up. I'm actually going to be dropping a couple of teaser assets after this AMA today that'll kind of give you a sneak peek at what we've been working on over the last couple of months. Anyway, I'm going to dive into a couple of more questions just to round out our last 10 minutes. Just as a reminder to the community, if you have any questions that you want answered live here, feel free to add them into the chat. We're going to wrap around noon, so we've got about 10 minutes left. In the meantime, I'm going to answer a question from Graytail Swap Mantle Swap, who asks, what's the L1 team strategy for addressing the issues of high network maintenance costs, low transaction processing speed, limited scalability, and security risks that may impact the stability and efficiency of the Lamina One network in the future? Obviously, huge question. But do we have any sort of thoughts on just kind of like addressing maintenance cost, transaction processing speed, scalability, all of the big challenges that are currently facing everyone in Web3 today?
The biggest challenges in Web3? Yeah. I mean, we could have an entire talk about how to address these challenges. But to do it in a fairly short response, the main approaches here are strategies here are to use proof of stake over proof of work, as I mentioned before, which takes away not only a lot of the cost for running nodes, because you don't have an arms race for building these insanely performant validator nodes. And you also don't have the environmental impact of running those nodes. So that's one aspect of it, and that helps keep the actual operation of the nodes less expensive, which translates, generally speaking, to lower transaction fees. And then again, because proof of stake doesn't require that heavy computational work, you end up with lower transaction times as well. So proof of stake versus proof of work, that was one strategy. The other strategy, I'd say the primary strategy, is what I said earlier, which is this notion of app-specific chains, or the notion that experiences have dedicated infrastructure, and they have the ability to design or parameterize that infrastructure according to the needs of their application. So, a lot of the big partners that we spoke to who want to build on Web3 but haven't, like one of the big things they've been concerned about was, unreliable fee structures, or unpredictable fee structures. It might be really low fees one day or even 1 hour and really high the next. And like just the inability for them to really control those fees for their end users. So that's one big thing that this subnet architecture approach that I mentioned really helps address. You number one, you get to define the fee structure, how those fees are defined, even what currency they're paid in. You get to define the infrastructure itself, so you can define what types of validators are running your application-specific blockchain. So you can handpick them if you want. You can also make it permissionless if you want it to be kind of more open. But then you also, of course, have that dedicated computational environment only for your chain. So you're not competing with a bunch of other chains for traffic, which will generally mean your fees are much more predictable, and they're much more in line with the actual use of your platform. So I'd say like high level and quick answer is that's how we're handling kind of like the major problems with Web3 at the moment.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
I'll just jump in there really quick and add to that. The infrastructure that Will's talking about was basically my initial excitement about how gaming developers could take advantage of that. Experienced developers. So that's always kind of been the intention. It's just really good to see it start to come to fruition. And the documentation for gaming will eventually reflect that for sure.
Alchemist19, who I see is live in the chat, shout out to Alchemist19, asked this week, what are some incentives for those of us who are pioneers in this adventure of no return? I will say I don't think it has no return, although I guess if we're heading full into the metaverse, I'll see you all in virtual reality. But incentives. So let's talk about where we're at in the development of Lamina 1. As I said at the top of this, we are currently in testnet, transitioning to beta net, end of May, early June, according to our current timeline. So I want to stress that, since we're in testnet and beta net, again, NFTs, tokens, none of them are real. Everything is sort of like testing. We're building the platform. We're going to have resets. They'll all erase, everything like that. Any sort of incentives or quote unquote airdrops for all of our airdrop hunters out there, you're going to have to wait until we get closer to the launch of Lamina 1 as a platform, right? We're still in early days of building, engineering, tokenomics talks, all of that stuff. In terms of what are the incentives for participating in testnet? So we are obviously working with Zeely and Crew 3 to track who is testing. We've got an XP system that is tracking who's completing the quests, and that will be rolled out in a couple of ways. So again, at the end of testnet, we're going to be having a giveaway where, according to that XP, the more XP you earn, the more sort of think of them as raffle tickets you'll get to win the testnet giveaway. That testnet giveaway will include perks, including, think Lamina 1 merch, early access to BetaNet. We are actually planning an upcoming event series that we want to work that into. And also to answer a question from Crypto Da Vinci, who's asking about, are we going to be launching a brand ambassador program? Yes, I am at work actually right now structuring out how that brand ambassador program will work and how the brand ambassador program will be incentivized. And basically, for anyone who is really highly engaging in testnet, helping us test, helping other users out, we have you flagged. We have people flagged for ambassador programs. We'll also be opening up applications for an ambassador program where people can kind of share with us more about, what their work is, what their community is, and all of that. But, if you've been really active in testnet, we have your name on a list, and we're definitely going to be inviting you to future things that will allow you to get early access, to engage in our events. And I also want to stress that, we're in the United States. There are regulations for crypto companies and blockchain companies. So we have to be a little bit vague about promising incentives, and I hope you all can understand that. So with that, I'm going to end with one last question from Crypto Summer, who asks, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out in the crypto ecosystem? I figured that was a good closing question for our engineering team.
I have a couple of things that I would have said when I originally came on. It was kind of run away as a classic game developer, and that's not true right now. I think follow documentation editions that we create. Also, things like nftschool.dev and the general Ethereum documentation are both really good opportunities to figure out what you don't know. That's the most important thing to know. What don't you understand yet? And that might hover around smart contracts. It might hover around the generalities of cryptography. But in my experience over, I'd say the past year, it would be you have to know what you don't know, and the Discord community is probably a good place to start that.
Great. Well, that is the end of our questions for this session's AMA. We really appreciate you all for joining us. Again, I'm going to be recording this, posting this up on YouTube. And again, we host these every week. So if you have any additional questions, feel free to pop them into AMA questions anytime. We also did have a quest this week that basically provides XP for submitting a question for upcoming AMAs. So also feel free to submit to that form. We've got a big cache of questions. I think I've got, 400 to 600 at this time. So thank you all so much for joining us, participating. Testnet continues. Another week of NFT Playground quests is dropping next week. And we will see you over, the next sort of, month as we wrap up our final month of Testnet. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next week.